Kia ora koutou. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Lex, an advisor here at Charity Services, and I'm joined by Dawn Logan, our capability accountant. We are presenting this webinar today, co-presenting. The webinar is directed at charities that complete their annual reporting to Charity Services under the Tier 4 not-for-profit standard. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Can you hear us? Make sure your computer is unmuted and check your internet if you're having trouble. In the unlikely event that our sound cuts out, we'll work through any technical difficulties and aim to be back in touch with you as soon as possible. This webinar is being recorded, and we will send you an email with links to the recording and any resources we discuss. We have allowed time at the end for answering questions, so please type your questions into the Q&A box as you think of them. Please note, we won't be able to answer questions specific to your charity. If you do have specific questions for your own charity, please email us at info@charities.govt.nz. Before we continue, we just want to make sure you're in the right webinar. This webinar is an introduction to the Tier 4 not-for-profit financial reporting standards introduced in May 2023 and is designed for Tier 4 charities who have not reported before or who may want a refresher on what is required. We'll call this the Tier 4 standard for this webinar. How do you know if you should choose the Tier 4 standard? The Tier 4 standard is the only standard allowed for charities who use cash accounting. Charities must also have operating payments less than $140,000 per year and no public accountability. Operating payments include money spent on day-to-day costs. They do not include the purchase of assets such as computers or investments like stock. Cash-based accounting is when cash is recorded when it's received by your charity, as it leaves your bank account, or when physical cash is used to pay for something. And cash-based accounting excludes depreciation. If your charity uses accounting software such as MYOB or Xero, you're probably using accrual accounting and must therefore use the Tier 3 not-for-profit standard. As mentioned, the Tier 4 standard and template can only be used for cash-based accounting. While all charities are generally considered to be publicly accountable, public accountability has a specific meaning in the accounting standards. Generally, public accountability includes entities whose main activity is holding cash or other assets on behalf of others, like a superannuation scheme, or who issue debt or equity. If your charity does fall into this definition, you must report under Tier 1. The full definition of public accountability for financial reporting purposes can be found on the External Reporting Board, XRB, website. Registered charities have multiple obligations, including filing annual returns every year. What you put in your annual return appears on the Public Charities Register. This lets people see what your charity is doing and helps create a complete picture of the charitable sector. Completing your annual return and doing it correctly is a very important part of remaining registered. It helps build the public's trust and confidence in your charity and the charitable sector. Charity Services helps you understand your obligations and make sure you're meeting them. This can include education activities like today's webinar. Charity Services also manages the Charities Register, monitors charities' compliance with their obligations, and when necessary, takes appropriate regulatory action. This is all part of our responsibility to be an effective regulator. However, as a regulator, we cannot provide legal or accounting advice. So what can you expect from today's webinar? First, we'll explain what the annual reporting requirements are for registered charities. Next, we'll explain the purpose of the performance report, go through the 4 sections of the report, and we'll provide an example to show how that information is presented in the template. We'll discuss what information you'll need to collect throughout the year to make reporting easier, and we're also going to show you where to find help. There's a lot of information to get through today, but remember you can watch the recording at any time. We will email you the links to the webinar recording and any resources we mention. As a registered charity, you're required to report to Charity Services every year. This is called an annual return and involves 2 key components: a completed performance report and a completed annual return form. Most people complete the annual return form online as it's quicker and easier. In the annual return form, you'll first need to either update your charity's details or confirm that the registered details are still correct. Once you've confirmed or updated your details, you'll answer some questions about your charity. Some of the information may be the same as what's in your performance report, so make sure you refer to your completed performance report for the answers. Your annual return, including the performance report, will be publicly available on the charity's register. Additionally, the data you provide through the annual return form is collated with the other charities on the register to provide information about the wider charitable sector in Aotearoa. Your charity must report to Charity Services within 6 months of your financial year ending. For example, if your charity's balance date, which is the name for your end of year financial year, is the 31st of March 2025, then you must file your annual return by the 30th of September 2025. But what are financial reporting or accounting standards? The standards set out how the not-for-profit sector will prepare financial statements. They provide a standardized way of accounting for the not-for-profit sector to ensure information is clear and comparable. The standards are developed and issued by the External Reporting Board, XRB, which is an independent Crown entity. As charities vary so much in size, the XRB created 4 different tiers of reporting. You can find the right tier for your charity by visiting the Charity Services website, charities.govt.nz. The Tier 4 NFP standard is in effect for financial years that began on or after the 1st of April 2024. Charities that had a balance date of 31 March 2025 must use the updated standard to create their performance report. However, charities with earlier balance dates that are currently preparing their performance reports can also use the updated standard. For example, if your financial year ended in December 2024 and your performance report and annual return are due by the end of June 2025, you can choose to use a Tier 4 NFP standard. Templates are available to download from XRB and on our website. Now we're going to look at the different parts of a performance report. The performance report includes non-financial and financial information. Overall, it's designed to show your charity's basic information, its main activities, and how money came into and out of your charity. The Tier 4 performance report has 4 distinct sections: 2 non-financial statements, entity information and the statement of service performance, 1 financial statement, the statement of cash paid and cash received, and the notes section, which provides more context for the previous sections. XRB has created 2 performance report templates, one simplified and one complete, to help you with your reporting. Both are available in Excel and PDF formats, and you can download them You can download them from either the charities.govt.nz website or from the XRB's website. The full template allows you to provide further information using the notes section. This is ideal if your charity has a lot of activity or if you need to include a detailed breakdown of the categories. The simple template is great if your charity doesn't have a lot of activity or if you don't need to use all the notes included in the full template. The simple template can be a more straightforward option, but you can use the full template if you want to provide additional information for one or a couple of categories. You aren't required to use all of the optional notes, though. Take a look at both the templates and choose the one that best suits your charity. We recommend you use the template the first time you report. It is optional, however, and we will still accept performance reports in other formats as long as they comply with the Tier 4 not-for-profit standard. For today's webinar, we'll be using a charity we made up to show you around the full Tier 4 template. We've named it the Awhina After School Care Trust. The purpose of this charity is to provide free after-school care to students of local primary schools. They were initially set up with a donation of $5,000 and were gifted a very old computer. They've since expanded and now use grants from the government so they can pay wages. They also sell calendars containing artwork made by the children who attend the after-school care program as a way to raise extra funds. They're applying the Tier 4 standard for the first time for the financial year that ended on 31st of January 2025. Now let's take a look at the non-financial parts of the performance report. As mentioned, the non-financial information consists of two statements, the entity information and statement of service performance. We'll look at the entity information first. This is the first page that people will look at in your performance report. Remember, your performance report is displayed on the charities register, which is open to the public to look for information about a charity. You can see this section requires you to record your charity's legal name and any other name you're known by, your charity's registration number or NZBN if you have one, financial year end date, and the type of entity. For example, you may be a charitable trust or an incorporated society. If you're unsure what type of entity your charity is, you can check by reading your rules and looking up your charity on the company's office website. The next section in the performance report is the statement of service performance. It asks you to describe your main activities. If it makes sense to, you can add in quantities. You don't need to list everything you did, just the most important activities. Think about the story you want to tell to readers, including funders. So next year you can see how you're tracking. You can see that Outfitter has detailed a variety of activities during the year. They have provided after-school care for 190 days, sold 100 calendars, and provided grants to 10 families. If you take a look at the far right column on the screen, you can see that the last year column is blank. If this is your first year of reporting, you'll see there will be no figures in the previous year. If you've reported before using the previous Tier 4 template, but this is your first year using the updated standard, then you have two choices for completing the last year column. You can either provide comparable figures for that year or attach your prior year performance report. So that's a quick overview of how to complete the non-financial parts of your performance report. Here are some tips to make sure this part of the performance report is easier. Create a plan at the start of the year about which activities your charity will do, and then decide what data and information you need to collect throughout the year to be able to report on it and how you'll record the information. Doing some planning now will make it easier to report at the end of the year. I'm now going to hand over to Dawn, who's going to discuss the financial parts of the performance report.
Thanks, Lex. Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk you through the financial parts of the performance report for Tier 4 charities. The first financial section is called the Statement of Cash Received and Cash Paid. It shows where money came from and what it was spent on. It includes money paid directly to or from your bank account, as well as any physical cash transactions. On the right-hand side of the slide, you can see what the completed Statement of Cash Received and Cash Paid will look like for the Athena Trust. All of the transactions are grouped together as either cash coming in or going out of the charity. Cash received by the charity for day-to-day transactions is included in the cash received from operating activities section. For the Athena Trust, the types of cash receipts that are included here are donations and grants received, as well as cash from the sale of calendars. Similarly, all of the cash paid out by the charity is included in the cash paid for operating activities section. For the Athena Trust, we have included payments to employees here, as well as volunteer costs, and the payments made to print the calendars they have sold. Your charity is registered for GST, and you have paid GST or received a refund of GST, enter that payment or receipt here. The Athena Trust is not registered for GST, so has left this field blank. You will also see that cash received from and paid for operating activities are grouped into the minimum categories under the standard. The purpose of grouping information into categories is to provide a standardized overview, making it easier for readers to see the types of funding received by a charity and where the money has been spent. If you are unsure what goes into each category, use your best judgment. More importantly, keep track of how you categorize your receipts and payments so that you are consistent from year to year. If you want to provide more information, you can do so in the Notes section of your performance report if you are using the full Tier 4 template. If you are using the simple Tier 4 template, there is no option for additional notes. This statement also includes a section for cash received and paid for other activities, such as cash received when borrowing funds or cash paid for investments or physical assets. The Athena Trust has included cash received from selling the old computer that had been donated to them, which was $50, as well as a payment for a new computer for $950. When you reach the bottom of the template, there is an area to enter the bank balances at the end of the financial year. In the template, all receipts and payments are added together into a total increase or decrease in bank accounts in cash for the year. The template is designed to automatically calculate subtotals and totals. These calculations are done in the cells colored in gray, so you don't need to change anything in these cells. For the Athena Trust, the total increase in their bank accounts for the year is $5,430. This amount is added to the opening balance in bank accounts at the beginning of the financial year, which is found at the top of the statement of cash received and cash paid. Since the Athena Trust started their charity this year, this balance is $0. The total bank account balance at the end of the year is therefore $5,430. The XRB template will tell you if the calculated closing balance in the bank account at the end of the year, based on the figures you entered for receipts and payments, does not match the balances listed at the bottom of the page for bank accounts, term deposits, and cash on hand. If this happens, you'll see a red square next to this section that shows current year doesn't match. There's also a message for last year's numbers as well. Check the figures you have entered for cash received and paid, as well as the beginning and ending cash balances. Once everything balances, the box will turn green and display OK. Remember, we will put a recording of this webinar on our website for you to work through again at your own pace. The last section of the performance report is called the Notes section. The purpose of this section is to provide readers with a better understanding of the information in your performance report. For example, you may want to use the notes to show the breakdown of individual fundraising events, or your funders might require more details about individual grants received. There are 2 notes that are required and 3 that are only required if applicable. When you use the template, you'll see that one of these required notes has already been mostly completed. The full template also includes other notes which are optional. We will go over these notes in detail below. Note 1 is accounting policies. In the Tier 4 simple template, this note is not numbered. All charities must complete this note. The purpose of this section is to explain the method of accounting used in your performance report. There are 2 statements that must be included in this note: basis of preparation and treatment of GST. The basis of preparation statement is already included in the template. It states that your charity is allowed to use the Tier 4 standard and that transactions are presented on a cash basis. Athena has added an additional statement to inform readers that this is their first year as a registered charity, the period of time the performance report covers, and that no comparative information has been included in the report. Next is GST. The Excel template defaults to the most common statement used by Tier 4 charities. The organization is not registered for GST, and all amounts are recorded inclusive of GST, if any. This means all the amounts shown on your performance report are the total cash you paid or received, including GST. When you click into the box, 2 additional options appear. The other options provided advise that the organization is registered for GST, and if the amounts recorded are either inclusive or exclusive of GST. Next, we'll talk about Note 6, Significant Assets. This note is required if applicable. The purpose of this note is to provide information about assets owned by the charity at the end of the financial year, which are considered to be significant. The XRB Tier 4 standard limits significant assets to 4 categories: land and buildings, vehicles, investments, and amounts owed to external parties. If your charity holds assets outside of these categories, you do not need to disclose them here. Where your charity holds assets in these categories, whether purchased or donated, you must enter an amount for the total value of these assets, if that value is easily available. This means the total amount paid to purchase the assets, or the total estimated current value, which could include the estimated replacement cost or estimated sale price. The XRB does not expect or require Tier 4 charities to obtain a formal valuation of significant assets. For example, a rateable value can be used for land and buildings, which can be found on a recent rates assessment or an invoice. If you use an estimated value, the source of the estimate must be noted in the space provided. In our example, Athena Trust was gifted a van. They estimated the value to be $10,000 and explained in the space provided how they came up with that figure. The next note is Note 7, Significant Liabilities. If applicable, this note requires information about any significant liabilities or amounts owed to external parties. You'll see the Athena Trust has included the amount owed for the lease of their care facility. Note 8 is for reporting related party transactions. In the simple Tier 4 template, this note is called Transactions with Close Relationships. This note is very important and is required to be completed. For financial reporting purposes, a related party is someone that has significant influence over the charity. You can think of this as decision-making power. Officers, committee members, or others who make decisions for the charity could be considered to have this power. Close members of their families due to their relationships, and other organizations that have significant influence over your charity. Related party transactions are transactions that happen between these related parties. The standard requires charities to report related party transactions for transparency, as related party relationships can affect how charities operate. Related party transactions could be either a transaction involving money or a transaction in kind, such as an officer providing accounting services at no cost. In our example, Athena Trust has disclosed the related party transactions that took place during the year. If there are no related party or close relationship transactions to report, you must provide that disclosure. The XRB template has provided that option. Note 9 is for reporting correction of errors. It is only required if applicable. This note provides readers with information about any errors relating to previous years that have been corrected in the current year's performance report. For example, if the closing bank balance in the previous year's report was incorrect and has been corrected in this year's report. If your charity has corrected an error in the current performance report, the following must be included in this note for each error relating to a previous financial year: the cause of the error and how the error has been corrected in the current financial year. If you are using the full Tier 4 template, you have the option to include the following notes. These notes help your charity to provide more detail about the receipts in each category on the statement of cash received and cash paid. Note 2. Analysis of cash received from operating activities. Note 3, analysis of cash paid for operating activities. Note 4, analysis of cash received from other activities. And Note 5, analysis of cash paid for other activities. The Athena Trust has chosen to use the optional note relating to cash paid for operating activities. They have provided details of their employees' expenditure, as well as costs relating to the sale of goods and other costs. At the time of this webinar, the XRB templates do not provide a section for additional notes. Charities can include an additional note in the Excel template by copying and pasting Note 9. Charities can include additional notes so that they can provide any other information that helps readers understand their overall performance. For example, a charity might want to disclose information about events after the financial year ended, or explain how grants received are expected to be used. For more guidance, please refer to the XRB Tier 4 standard and the Tier 4 reporting guide on our website. That completes the financial information sections of the performance report. We spoke about the 3 required statements: the statement of financial performance. This isn't correct. We spoke about the 1 section that is required for Tier 4, which is the statement of cash received and cash paid, and we discussed the notes to the financial statements. We discussed how these statements are supported by the additional information in these policies and notes. The final step to complete the performance report is to ensure it is signed and dated by the officers of your charity who have the authority to approve the performance report. Charities are required to show in the performance report when it was approved and authorized to be published, who gave that authorization, and their signatures. A digital signature is acceptable here. In the XRB template, the signature field is just below the statement of service performance. Your next steps are to start thinking about how you collect the information you need to prepare your performance report. You may already collect the information required through your bank statements. However, setting up a simple system to categorize receipts and payments throughout the year can be very helpful. You can write the category next to each transaction on the bank statement when you receive it, or if you're comfortable with technology, you can set up a simple Excel spreadsheet to categorize transactions. It is good practice to track any grants you might receive and how the money was spent, especially if there are conditions attached to them. Also, be sure to list your significant assets and any significant amounts owed by your charity, as well as money held on behalf of others. We recommend you make a list throughout the year. Collecting data throughout the year is crucial to being able to complete your performance report.
So now we have some time for your questions. Please type your questions into the Q&A box if you haven't done so already. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can. We just request that you don't ask questions specific to your charity. If you have those specific questions, please send us an email or give us a call. Our contact information is on the slide. Our first question. Charities with multiple branches with individual bank accounts, how do they report?
That sounds quite specific, but have a look if you're filing as a group. If it is one charity with multiple branches, you'll need to combine everything.
And if we fill in the annual return form online, do we still need to submit the performance report?
Absolutely. As we mentioned in one of the first slides, the annual return filing includes the annual return, the annual report online, as well as a performance report.
That's right. And if you've reported to funders previously but weren't registered, can you still include that, or should you not? I'm not sure I understand the question. As comparative figures?
I'm not really sure what this question means. If you could write to us in the inbox, that would be great. And we could probably help you with your individual situation.
That's right. This is a question about the Excel template, I believe. Can we hide notes or lines within notes that are not applicable, or do we keep them as empty rows? For example, note 6 is not applicable.
Yeah, it depends on your skill with Excel. It is certainly possible to delete notes that are not required to be completed. You can either delete them or hide the rows.
But if they are required, they have to.
If they're required, then you have to either choose the statement or complete the note.
And can we edit notes, items in notes, for example, under statement of cash received and paid, can you tailor the minimum categories?
You can to a point, but please be aware that the minimum categories are what they are. If you want to change the name of the minimum category to be more indicative of your situation. So for example, if it says donations, COHA, bequests, and other fundraising, and all you have is donations, you can change it to donations, but you can't completely rename it to a different category. Also keep in mind the annual return groupings that you'll be filling out are the same categories as on the performance report. So if you were to rename it or adjust it significantly, you would still need to know what category, what minimum category it would have been in when you fill out the annual return.
Yeah, having the performance report and annual return form match one-to-one might be an easier option.
And the minimum categories are there for standardization across the sector.
Does a donation from a related party have to be disclosed, or only payments to them?
Both money received and money paid to related parties, to and from related parties, are required to be disclosed.
Next question. If a contract was entered into with a related party, but as contract for service, for example, money in, not out, should this be declared as such in the related parties area?
Yes, and keep in mind that we're looking for significant transactions between related parties and the charity. If it's a minor transaction, it does not need to be disclosed.
Next question. I downloaded the template some months ago. Your examples seem to have changed. Is that likely?
That is likely. We are working with XRB. As we have created the examples, we're finding the templates might have some errors or potentially not quite as easy to use. So we've fed that back to XRB. They are currently changing some of the templates or the templates for some of the fields, minor changes. You may have noticed that if you downloaded the templates or watched our previous webinar, that some of the notes were listed as required, even though they were actually required only if applicable. So we fed that back to XRB, and they are currently updating the template to reflect that. We have already reflected in our examples because that change is coming in about, I think they said 2 to 3 weeks, the new templates will be out, or updated templates.
And we will update those templates on our website
As
once
soon as
the new ones are available
exactly.
on XRB. Next question. If one of the board of trustees of the charity performed as an artist in an event conducted by the charity and get remuneration for this program, does that need to be included in the report?
That sounds like a specific situation if you would like to email us directly about that.
It also sounds like potentially a related party transaction.
It does,
Yeah.
yes.
What's the dollar threshold for a significant asset?
Look, that's a very good question. I've had a lot of discussions with the XRB about significant assets. When the XRB updated the standard to be the Tier 4 not-for-profit standard that was applicable since April last year, they wanted to reduce how much Tier 4 charities had to think about the word significant. And they've made this decision that when it comes to assets, that they have determined just those categories are significant. So if you have assets at all, any asset at all in those categories and only those categories, those are considered significant. It's no longer a dollar value when it comes to those asset categories.
Fair enough. Is there the ability to attach additional information like accounts?
There is, but remember, the requirement is to meet the standard. So that's why we have gone over the template today, because it meets the standard and will comply with everything that you need to complete and attach to your annual return filing. If you have additional information that you want to include in addition, or if you can print out accounts from an accounting software that also meet the standard, that's fine. We will accept those. But just sending us financial statements on their own is not compliant.
And also keep in mind that if you do provide additional information on top of the performance report, it will be publicly available on the register.
That's right.
As this is the updated standard, do we use this template or the old one for reporting on the 31st of September 2025? I think that means for years ending 31 March because you'd have a due date of 30 September.
That's right. This is the template you'd use.
Do we need to include a number of volunteer hours for the charity?
That's included. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lex.
I think that is included in the annual return form rather than the performance report. So it is information you will need to provide. It's just not in the performance report template. And what happens if one or more branches don't provide information? I think this is about structure.
Yeah, that is. That is an internal issue. Your report should cover, well, is required to cover all of the finances for your charity. If there are branches that are separately registered, then they will have their own compliance issues. But if they're all registered under one charity, you need to collect all of that information and report it.
Fair enough. Pretty straightforward, I think. And when you're ready to save out of the performance report, do you include the guidance notes? Is this best done by saving as a PDF? I think this means when you're creating a final version of the document, when you save it, does it include the notes? It can do. It depends on how you save it, but you can also save or print to PDF a specific set of pages if you want to exclude those guidance notes.
Yeah, when I printed out the templates to come to this webinar today, I printed it directly from Excel, and they have it set so that the performance report prints out if you're printing on one page at a time, and then all the notes print out separately. When you go to upload it to your annual return, I would just include the actual performance report. The guidance notes are really just for your benefit.
Fair enough. The committee member is required to make repeated purchases on behalf of the charity, for an example, for an event, and get reimbursed. Does that need to be recorded in the related party section?
That's a bit of a complicated question. It isn't advisable for charities to structure their finances that way. As you are a registered charity, you should have an associated bank account where all of the transactions are flowing through. If that is the case where a committee member is buying things on behalf of the charity and getting reimbursed, that would still be recorded as expenditure, but you really should keep very good records that that is happening to ensure that it does not look as if the committee member is just receiving money from the charity. It isn't necessarily a related party transaction because they aren't receiving a benefit. They're buying things on behalf of the charity, but it is not the best financial practice to do that if you can use the actual bank account for the charity.
In the past, we've used the performance report generator in the Xero accounting system. Do you know if Xero or any other platforms have updated their system to the current standard?
I know that Xero has a template for tier 3. I wouldn't expect they would have a template for tier 4, as generally Xero is accrual-based accounting. I I know that you can have the option to print out particular financial statements as cash, but it's not compliant with the actual template for tier 4 accounting. Um, Charities that are tier 3 that have an accounting firm, I understand can access the tier 3 template, but it's not always available to charities who subscribe to Xero directly.
Do you have to show volunteer costs as they're normally very nominal?
You need to record all of the money that goes in or out of your charity. So if you are paying cash, as this is cash-based accounting for costs related to your volunteers, then yes, they need to go on that line that says volunteer-related costs.
Do the accounts have to be done through a chartered accountant or a practicing accountant, or can people do them themselves?
Tier 4 is designed for charities to prepare the performance report on their own. You do not need a chartered accountant or any other accountant to prepare them. You can always use one if you'd like to. Once you move into tier 3 and you start to have expenditure over 550,000 or even upwards of $1 million, then there are requirements to have a review or an audit. But I wouldn't expect this would be relevant to a tier 4 cash-based charity.
Fair enough. If the charity was set up in the middle of the financial year, or became registered in the middle of the financial year, would the whole year's transactions need to be reported, or just what was after the registration date?
That's more of a complex question because there's also the question of if you were operating in the previous year. So if you could email us, that would be helpful.
The next question. Once we've submitted our annual return, will you get in touch if something isn't right? What's the following process?
There are several things that we review once the annual return has been filed. Remember that payments are also due, so that might be something you'll hear from us if a payment hasn't been received, if one is required. As for compliance checks, we do random checks throughout the year, randomly selected by our system. So if your annual return is selected, we will have a review and then let you know if it's not compliant.
We currently attach a basic balance sheet, but are tier 4. Do we still comply?
No, that is not compliant. The performance report needs to include everything that's required by the standard, which is the statement of service performance, as well as the minimum categories within the financial statement, which is called the statement of cash received and cash paid, and all of the notes.
Can it be done as a paper form and posted to us?
Let's.
Absolutely. You can print out a copy of the performance report that you can fill in by hand or fill it in on your computer and then print it out. If you do that, you'll also need to send us an annual return form, which are available on our resources page. Make sure it's also tier 4 so that both the performance report and annual return have the same tier. Send that to us and we can key it into the system on your behalf. But if you have access to a computer, it is easier to complete it online or on your device and then upload it online to us. It's also much more immediate, so you don't have to wait for post to arrive, and the system can check if you've included all the information.
And there's an additional cost, isn't there?
If you file it by paper and a filing fee is required, currently the filing fee is slightly higher for paper, that's right. How much is considered a minor or major transaction between related parties?
Yeah, that really is, it's dependent on your charity, how large your charity is, what kind of transactions you have. So, for example, if your charity only has $10,000 of expenses, but easily 50% of them, so $5,000 is a related party transaction, that's significant. If, however, there's only a $50 transaction with someone who's related, that's pretty minor in comparison to the expenditure you have. So it's really dependent on your charity and how it operates and what the transactions are with the related party.
And what is the XRB is the next question.
The XRB is the External Reporting Board. They are an independent Crown entity who writes all of the accounting standards for all of the entities in New Zealand. That includes for-profit businesses, government entities, and nonprofit entities such as charities.
And how do you report changes in value for managed funds?
That's a accrual accounting, that sounds to me. So you might want to check out our Tier 3 webinar for that.
The template has 4 worksheets, cover how to use the report itself and the charity services AR converter. Do we leave all of that? The only required parts are the actual performance report itself. So all the sections were mentioned here, the non-financial, financial, and the notes, those are the required parts.
Yeah, you'll find in the new template that it isn't across several tabs anymore. It's just one tab in one Excel spreadsheet. I know that the former template had several tabs that you'd have to complete, and they'd all kind of related to each other. They don't do that anymore. It's all one page.
Just the next question. To clarify, if we use Xero, are we not compliant?
Yeah, we didn't say that. If you use Xero, it is likely that you are using accrual-based accounting. If you are using accrual-based accounting, you cannot use the Tier 4 standard because it is for only cash-based accounting. It means you would need to step up to Tier 3. But also, if you use Xero and you only print out financial statements and provide those to us, those are not compliant. You'll need to take that information and put it into a performance report that's either for Tier 4, if you're cash-based, or Tier 3, if you're accrual-based.
Next question. If a related company is being paid for a service they provide, is that to be included as a related party transaction, or is it simply a business transaction like it would be with other companies we receive and pay services for?
A related company is a related party.
And if there's a transaction, that's a related party transaction.
That's right. If that related company is in any way has any control over your charity, have a look at our website. We set out pretty clearly how to step through if a transaction is related.
One more question, I think. If you have assets like band equipment, laptop, do you need to use Tier 3 reporting?
No. I did ask this question when XRB said, we have decided significant assets are only these 4 categories. And I said, what about charities that have livestock or musical instruments? And they said, yeah, that'll happen. They just won't put them on their form. So if they don't fit into those 4 categories, you simply do not report them as significant assets. If you're cash-based and you meet the other requirements of Tier 4, as far as having less than $140,000 of expenditure and no public accountability, you're still Tier 4. You can still file at Tier 4. It's just that you won't be able to list your assets under significant assets. Now, that's where you might want to say, well, I still want to tell people about my assets. So you can copy note 9 and just say, I have an additional note for everyone. By the way, we have other assets. This is how we do them. If you don't want to, that's fine. You're not required. If you want to step up to tier 3, that's also an option to you, but you don't have to in order to report your assets. It's just that the XRB has decided they only care about those 4 categories.
Fair enough. Now, we understand there was a lot of information included in the webinar today. Remember, you can watch it again when you're preparing your performance report, as the recording will be available on our website. We hope that attending today's session was useful to you and you now understand more about how to use the template to prepare the performance report. If we didn't get to your question, please contact us via email or phone. Thank you for attending and all the best with your reporting.